At this point, I think a lot of people would be surprised to learn the fact that Charles Oliveira is my favorite fighter. I mean, I love Charles Oliveira. I always have. The impact Charles Oliveira has had on my life has been, nothing short of extraordinary. And I'm just being honest. The first time I'd ever watched Charles Oliveira, I was but a boy. But after watching him, he turned me into something that, frankly, the words kind of fall short in terms of trying to describe. I think, honestly, I truly mean this. I think Charles Oliveira stands for something a lot greater than just a fighter. I think he is an ideal. I think he's a symbol. See, as a man, you're corruptible. But as a symbol, you're not corruptible. That is a quote from The Godfather, I'm pretty sure. I think that Charles Oliveira, again, man, I've kind of lost my train of thought, but one thing I have not lost is the fact that he is fighting this weekend against Michael Chandler. And yeah, I'm pretty scared. Yeah, I'm frankly extremely terrified. I mean, if Charles Oliveira loses this fight, I do not know what I'm going to do. I don't know. What, am I going to take all these pictures down? Like, no, I'm not going to do that. I would rather kill myself than take down these photos. But if he loses, that's kind of game over. If he loses, that's it. I mean, there's no more Charles Oliveira. I don't think there's any more Charles Oliveira fan club. And I don't know if I have a place on YouTube without Charles Oliveira behind me illuminating me. All right, but look, is there any realistic chance he loses to Michael Chandler? Yeah, no, there really is. Like, look, Michael Chandler fights like he just dropped a gallon of PCP. This guy is so ferocious and terrifying. He goes at you so fucking hard. And Charles Oliveira, look, Charles Oliveira is a lot of things. But one of those things is he's hittable. He's hittable. And if you get cracked against Michael Chandler, anything can happen. Round one of this fight, I'm going to be literally shitting myself. Round one of this fight, I'm going to be fucking flopping like a fish. I don't know. Again, I am so scared. I've been having night terrors regularly. I've been having a lot of trauma and PTSD flashbacks of his loss to Arman and Islam. And I've been having visions of him knocked out, laying there lifeless with Michael Chandler backflipping sporadically. And I don't want that. I really don't want that. I am so scared, man. I'm scared. No, I'm honest. I'm fucking terrified. I don't want that to happen. That literally can't happen. That can't happen. I don't know what I'm going to do if it happens. I cannot live in a world where Charles Oliveira got knocked out by Michael Chandler. I can't do it. I can't do it. I really can't do it. I can't do it. I don't want it. And okay, I mean, look, Charles Oliveira, I don't think he's quite the same as he was during his initial title run. I don't think he's quite the same. I think part of that comes down to style, but I also think part of that comes down to Charles has lost a piece to himself post the Islam and the Arman fights. I think he genuinely lost a piece of himself. And what I mean by that is, Charles Oliveira is a submission artist like nobody else in the lightweight division. That is just an undeniable fact. The thing that makes Charles Oliveira so good, what makes him special, is his ability to jump on submissions from a completely neutral position and have a very high proficiency in finishing them. I mean, again, you look at somebody like Islam Makhachev, he's the kind of guy that needs to break you with grappling. He breaks you with really high-level positional grappling, and then he takes whatever submission is left over. But Charles, on the other hand, again, he can jump on submissions, and that's what makes him special. But again, Charles, what I believe he struggles with recently in his career is causing scrambles, getting into those positions where he can jump on submissions. Like when we go back to Charles' initial run to the title, when he really had that just rebirth, and exactly what caused that rebirth, I mean, only Allah knows. But you go back and you look at the Jared Gordon fight. I mean, look, Jared Gordon, that's the guy that literally fraud-checked Paddy Pimblett. Jared Gordon exposed Paddy Pimblett in a way that he never has before. And I understand Jared Gordon does have some deficiencies, but he's very, very skillful. And when it comes to just straight up grappling, he trains under John Danaher at the most prestigious grappling school in the world. He's very high level. And you see a moment in that fight where Gordon goes to clinch and Charles hit him with such a clean uchimata. He got Gordon to his knees and then jumped over for an armbar attempt. And I mean, this is what Charles needs to be doing constantly, because again, what makes him so good is his ability to jump on submissions. And the way to get into the position where you can jump on a submission is by causing a scramble. But where was this in the Arman Tsarukyan fight? Where was this in the Islam Makhachev fight? It just wasn't really there. I mean, after those two fights, people legitimately talk about the fact that Charles needs to learn how to wrestle. Like that is literally a point discussed by people. And again, I understand why they're saying that, but Charles Oliveira knows how to wrestle, man. Charles knows how to wrestle. I mean, you go back to the very first Michael Chandler fight, and Charles Oliveira dropped down on a double leg that was so deep that Michael Chandler himself said, I had to jump guillotine because I was getting taken down. He was too deep on the takedown. And from there, of course, Charles gets on his back, sunk the body triangle in, and now he is playing his game to an elite level. You go and look at the Dustin Poirier fight, he was getting to the clinch, and he was using his length and his leverage to try to get Dustin down. And again, Dustin did a really good job defending, but, this is Charles's game. The finishing sequence, he feinted a double leg and then used it to circle to his back, jumped on his back standing and was able to finish the choke. But again, we look at the Islam Makhachev fight, and of course, Islam Makhachev coming from, a judo sambo background, his game relies on fighting in the clinch, and that is always going to be difficult for Charles. I mean, no matter what, as we saw, Charles tried to work in the clinch there, and he ended up getting hip tossed because Islam Makhachev, frankly, is such a dangerous fight, such a bad matchup for Charles in particular. But Charles made one attempt to take that fight to the ground. Just one attempt, and it came from him trying to hit a lateral drop. And he actually got Islam down to his knees. Now, Islam was able to stand back up, but again, this is Charles's game. This is what he should always be looking to do. He needs to be a spaz to the highest degree. The thing that separates him from everybody in the division for the millionth time is his ability to jump on submissions. That is what makes him so special. But instead of being a spaz, instead of just throwing his legs up in the air and trying to grab any sort of limb or leg lock or anything, he instead decided to stay in full guard with his head pressed into the fence. And, I've talked about in depth on the channel many, many times, but this just completely eliminates all of your movement from the bottom. This is the worst position you could possibly be in. And the only advice Charles' corner gave him in between the first and second round of the Islam fight was, don't let him be on top of you. They said that's Islam's game, to be on top of you. Don't let him do it. I mean, were they even watching the fight? Remember when Charles actually tried transitioning and moving to different areas and he attacked Islam's legs and Islam just aborted mission? I mean, no. Look, it's not about Islam just simply being on top of you. It's the fact that you are locking yourself down in full guard. You're pinning yourself by just grabbing this position and staying there. Again, Charles needs to be a spaz. He needs to be fucking spinning underneath him like a goddamn top, just trying to grab any kind of limb he can. And again, I don't think Charles, I think he's lost a piece of himself. I think he's lost a piece of himself. I mean, where were the uchimata attempts? Look, of course, Islam Makhachev is probably the best judoka. I mean, apart from Kayla Harrison, maybe in the UFC, period. But I mean, that's the thing, right? Charles does not need to finish any uchimatas, doesn't need to finish any throws, but literally any sort of grappling transition that causes any kind of a scramble, that causes Islam to have to defend, is a moment to jump on a neck, to jump on an arm, jump on a leg. But again, Charles, he's lost a piece of himself. At the very start of the Arman fight, Arman throws a kick, Charles kicks his bottom leg out, gets Arman to fall, he jumps on his neck, and frankly, like we've talked about in depth before, he should have finished that choke if it wasn't for Arman's shorts sliding off. But look, regardless, this is Charles's game, jumping on things. But again, you go back to that fight, and apart from that one singular moment, all he tried to do was fight off of his back. up until the very end of the fight where he got Arman to slide off the top, and then boom, another scramble was created, and he immediately locks up a Darce that Arman had to fight to survive, completely flatten himself out immediately and just try to survive, because he knew if he started moving or transitioning, Charles was just going to sink it in that much deeper. And, again, those two moments, Charles needs to constantly be trying to do, but instead he chooses to fight off of his back. And I think he's lost a piece of himself. And I think, you look at the Michael Chandler fight, and again, it's a terrifying fight. Michael Chandler is very anti-jiu-jitsu, especially round one, because he's so fucking strong and small and compact. His body type is the most difficult to work off your back because he's so strong, his limbs are so short, and look, it's a very scary fight. But Charles, one thing is for absolute certain, he cannot try to fight from full guard throughout this entire fight. He just can't do it. He is going to be so much better at submissions than Michael Chandler is, but again, I don't know. I think he needs a revamp. He needs someone to get in his ear and tell him, you gotta spaz. You gotta spaz. You can't get stationary off of your back. And again, man, he can win this fight. Honestly, he should be the favorite. But it's so terrifying and it's so scary. And frankly, man, I think Charles, I don't think he's the same as he was. And I think he's lost himself. And I pray to Allah every day that he finds himself. I really, really do.